Hello all. So, Stranger Things Season 5, the final season. 8 episodes that should have been 3 at the most. First, my spoiler-free thoughts. Overall, the series had some nice moments, but was torturously slow, peppered with supposedly emotional moments between characters I didn't care about, and whilst we got an end, for me it just wasn't satisfying enough compared to what could have been. Everyone had plot armour, and it was full of contrivances and coincidences. But to be fair, that's pretty much how it's been every series. The D&D gang saving the day usually by pure guesswork and conspicuous amounts of flukery, and Elle riding in at the end. This series was all about the Whammons. They were pushed to the fore, and the series, other characters and their own characters suffered as a result. For example, there's an inordinate amount of time spent on a tertiary character's relationship that I don't care about, and the overlong epilogue undid it anyway. The dialogue was often ropey and the explanation of the Upside Down was ridiculous and doesn't bear up to scrutiny. Whilst it does wrap up the story, despite the many contrivances, most of it just felt like filler. On to spoilers, and as I initially said, this series could have been massively condensed. The pacing is leaden at times, with lots of soap opera moments, and stuff that doesn't matter happening. The end of the last season was pretty dramatic, and we start this season with a massive anti-climax because we come back 2 years later and everyone is just living like normal, even though Hawkins is under military quarantine. It's such a weak start, we've gone backwards. The Scooby Gang, now bursting at the seams with unnecessary characters, are monitoring the army, whilst Harper is going on sorties into the Upside Down to try and find Vecna, and is also training Elle to be ready to face him, despite not wanting her to. He pretty much mopes about and feels neutered when he's not shooting people. He feels like a shadow of his old self. Dustin has also been moping around since Eddie's death, and that's not really dealt with properly. However, he and Steve have one of the actual meaningful relationships and exchanges in the show. All the others feel like play acting. The army, or that part of the military looking for Elle, have a base in the Upside Down, and Harper spends a lot of the series just merrily offing them. With no consequences, of course. Nancy continues the arc from Series 4 of being an intolerable girl boss, and can outshoot professional soldiers, despite having zero training. She's joined by newly dubbed girl boss Robin, whose love life gets a ridiculous amount of focus, especially as said girlfriend seems to no longer be in the picture 18 months after they win. I presume the focus is because of the connection to Will's sexuality, and there is some decent interaction between them which helps him ultimately come out. But I'll get onto that later. End of the day, Robin's a tertiary character, who's less interesting than she used to be, taking focus from those I want to see. Both of these ladies also look like they've been on the Ozempic a little too much. Steve is completely cooked, and at one point he's told he can't handle a gun by Nancy Schwarzenegger. Jonathan is barely visible. I actually forgot his name at one point. He kind of has a story of being competitive over Nancy's attention with Steve because she is so special, their words, and is intending to propose, which leads to a life and death heart-to-heart with Nancy that's confused and confusing, and like most of the life and death situation, it's all limp and kind of empty because plot armour after all. Will's mum Joyce is just fussing around him really, her character eclipsed by the superfluous ones. Mike seems to be wandering through it, being Elle's boyfriend. Lucas is just there really. Will's arc is him struggling with his sexuality, which gives him powers. I'm being hyperbolic there obviously. And Dustin also feels a bit wasted. He has some really nice scenes. As I say, the one with Steve in particular, but most of it has no consequence, either emotionally or narrative wise. For example, as I say, Nancy kills soldiers, but literally doesn't care. She has no emotional reaction to killing people, and isn't held to account for it either. The gang kidnap people, but it's completely forgotten about 5 minutes later. There's literally no consequences, emotional or physical. No one of consequence dies either, certainly none of the extended Scooby Gang, just 8, an extra who appeared a few seasons ago. Basic story. Vecna, who is working with the Mind Flayer, is taking children to infuse them with Mind Flayer juice. Seriously, the imagery and overall idea behind this is really suspect. He will then use them to merge the Mind Flayer's world, the Abyss, and Earth. Why? Who knows? Doesn't matter clearly. One of the kids taken by a Demogorgon is Holly. Forgot who she was? Me too. Well, she's Mike and Nancy's little sister. who also gets a lot of screen time and is very drama school. The Demogorgon attacks the family home, critically wounding Mum and Dad. Mum turns up again later to save the day in a ludicrous way despite the apparent severity of her injuries, but Dad is completely forgotten. And no, I'm not exaggerating. He's nearly killed trying to defend his family, is taken to hospital his wife, and is never mentioned again, only appearing for a few seconds in the wrap-up scenes. Meanwhile, his wife gets a protracted hero scene defending their daughter, then gets to be a badass later. Man, it's so blatant this show now. Turns out the Upside Down is our side of a wormhole, joining the two worlds. It was created by Papa using exotic matter, which is in the Upside Down? Yeah, beside being a lame explanation, it literally makes no sense. Holly and the kids are in a room with pulsating flesh tubes feeding mind flayer juice into their mouths. Yep, see what I mean? But their minds are in Vecna's mind, which appears as a safe place. He's convinced them that they are going to save the world. Holly meets Max, who's also trapped in Vecna's mind. How? Don't ask. Finds out the truth, and they both escape to the real world, though they take their sweet time about it, and another supposedly tense scene is just dumb. Holly is recaptured, and with the end of the world about to begin, Will decides it's time to make an unearned, overly long, self-indulgent speech to the assembled congregation about being gay. There is a narrative reason, as Vector has been using his fears about being found out and rejected to control him. But man, is it long and just comes off as narcissistic. It's also ridiculously unrealistic and not particularly well acted. Certainly not by some of the ensemble. Bearing in mind this is a secret that he's been hiding for years, though not from us the viewer of course, because we all knew. And it's the 1980s. It should have been an emotional, intimate moment between his family and friends at a push. Not the entire cast, some of which he doesn't actually know. And two of whom have a missing sister and two parents in hospital. Yet everyone is totally cool with it. Not one of them stood up and said, "Cool dude, we get it, you like guys. Can we go on with saving the world now?" It is genuinely a bad scene, and like many others, it kills the pace and has no emotional weight. The point of the scene is literally just to exist as the scene, not to be part of the narrative, and it stands out as such. On to the finale. The kids and Joyce are going to the abyss, while Harper, Murray, Elle and 8, the red shirt of the series, go to the Upside Down to destroy the wormhole, get into Vecna's mind, bringing Max in too, to free the children and kill him. They stop the merging, but Vecna escapes and goes after the children. Now, bearing in mind, the abyss is where the Mind Flayer, Vecna, the Demogorgons and Demagogues should be, it is completely empty. After Nancy enters first, because of course she does, the group just meander across the empty land, chatting. Jonathan and Steve reconcile their differences and agree that Nancy is special. Literally their words. And you know, the one they just let walk into a potentially deadly environment first, and will later let be bait without any argument at all. They really love this girl clearly, and they're such icons of masculinity. They find the Mind Flayer, who is acting as a flesh base for Vecna and the kids, but it awakens and charges them. Right on cue, in rides Elle, who, after telling Harper that he's not her dad, has been jumping from floating rock to get here. Yep, apparently that happened, though we don't see the jumping. We also don't really know why the Mind Flayer is flesh now. Elle leaps in to face Vecna whilst Nancy acts as the aforementioned bait to get the Mind Flayer into a canyon. The others, who have somehow climbed to the top of the canyon, hit it with firebombs, etc. The idea being that there is a hive mind. Is there? Hurting the Mind Flayer will hurt Vecna, helping Elle win. But hang on a second. If there is a hive mind, wouldn't they be swarmed by Demogorgons and Demodogs the second they attacked? Well, yeah, but obviously it doesn't happen. They're still nowhere to be seen. With Will's help, Elle kills Vecna. The Mind Flayer dies. Not sure why it dies. It's smoke, not flesh. Wouldn't it just be smoke again? They free the kids and go home, are intercepted by the army, who the gang seem to have forgotten about. Elle escapes and seemingly sacrifices herself when the wormhole collapses. So the army stop pursuing her. Then we're treated to an hour of wrap-up, and yep, all that action was about an hour. Some of the wrap-up stuff works. Some, like the older kids' chat on a roof, is flat, but once again, no consequences. The military are gone, no charges are brought against Harper or the kids for murdering them. No one is disappeared. In fact, no one except Mike has any emotional baggage. They all just seem to have moved on. There's a funny graduation scene and a final D&D scene where Mike postulates that Elle might be alive. And that's it. It's fine. There is some enjoyment to be had, but it's empty. No tension because of obvious plot armour, no consequences, very little emotional complexity. Some nice moments, but just mainly filler. It is an end though, which I was glad about, so there was no after credit scene implying the threat's still there, although they were inferring that there will be some sort of sequel with Holly. So what did you all think? Did you enjoy it and find it a satisfying conclusion? Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, peace out.